maybe big data has gotten too big. Whether you're a B2B marketer or a consumer brand, your data needs to be viable, relevant, and accessible so that Stirista can help you retain customers, acquire customers, and make it personal.
Welcome to the Marketing Stir podcast by Stirista, probably the most entertaining marketing podcast you're going to put in your ear. I'm Vin, the producer here at Stirista. The goal of this podcast is to chat with industry leaders and get their take on the current challenges of the market, and we'll have a little fun along the way. In today's episode, Tiana Noveen, the director of marketing at Athlete Studio, chats about personalization for both marketers and consumers and how NFTs are a big change in the marketing options. Vincent is glowing after a trip to Mexico, and AJ likes his food spicy. Give it a listen.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Stirista's The Marketing Stir. It is so good to be talking to you all. I've got a lot of things to share with you. It's been a great and busy few weeks while we were, just before this recording. So I can't wait to share that with you. But let's take a quick break, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who don't know me, you're tuning in for the first time, and maybe you are. We are constantly growing. Thank you so much for those people who are sharing this word of mouth or sharing this online. It's been very good to see and hear from you. We'll talk about what I mean by that. Maybe I was at a conference recently. Maybe people were coming up to me. Did I feel famous? Maybe we'll get there in a moment, ladies and gentlemen. But before we do, I am your host, Vincent Petrofessor, the Vice President of B2B Products here at Stirista. Who are we? Let's talk about Stirista for like 12 seconds. Oh, that's all. We are a marketing technology company. We own our own business-to-business data, our own business-to-consumer data. We also have our own technology that helps people access that data to help them get new customers through email, display, connected TV. Want new customers? We can help. Email me at Vincent@Stirista.com. That is how confident I am. I just gave you my email address. And boy, are you using it. For a variety of reasons. We'll talk about that another time. But the other thing that has been great is I got to see my co-host in person. Stirista was very well represented. We were recently at the Ramp Up Conference at Live Ramp. We were in the house, ladies and gentlemen. My co-host, Mr. Ajay Gupta. What's going on, AJ?
Hey, Vincent. It feels strange to be at home. I've been traveling for 3 weeks, so this is nice to get back to recording podcasts again.
Exactly. This is like my first week. I was in Mexico, which if you're watching this, I still have my glow to me. By the time this comes out, it's probably going to be gone. But at least it's here on video. It's captured. But yeah, then I had Mexico with the family, and then one day at home, and boom, I'm hanging out with my other family, the Stirista family. We rolled deep at Ramp Up. It was a great conference this year.
Yeah, and I think that dinner will be memorable for a long time at China Live. Shout out to them.
China Live was a great time. But of course, what my co-host and my CEO does all the time at these dinners, because he has an appetite for the spice and the flair, he always orders these spicy, and I have like the stomach of a 3-month-old child, and he always orders these spicy things. So then he forgets when they arrive. He's like, "Oh, Vincent, you can't have these." I'm like, "Yeah, I can't have 3 of these dishes, AJ. Thank you so much."
But you know what? What we figured out is we're normally competing for the funniest one at Stirista, but it looks like we have several other contenders, especially our very own Brian Gold.
We have Brian Gold and Blaine Britton. I was cracked that you're funny when you make one of our coworkers, Matt Stout, laugh. If you can make Matt Stout laugh, my goodness, you need your own sitcom, because that's not easy. But yeah, we've got so many funny people. It was a great time. Conferences are back. They're back, AJ, I would think.
Yeah, that's probably one of the most packed conferences I've been to in a really long time. It was great to see a lot of people and see you guys. We have not been able to do that much either. So.
I know, but it was great, and we a lot of partners of ours, a lot of potential new partners there. Thank you for coming out. And I don't know if this happened to you, AJ, but a few people, maybe 5, 6 people. Of course, I was counting and keeping track. Were coming up to me and be like, "Hey, man, I love your podcast. I listen to you and AJ all the time." And when that happens, they proceed to tell you how they listen to you. It's like, oh, when I'm doing my expense reports, when I'm working out, I'm like, really? That motivates you to work out, hearing about marketing? But yeah, we've had a bunch of people come up to me, and maybe you as well. You just don't boast about it like I do. You're, you know, you've been famous for years, so this is all new to me.
Well, the only one you wouldn't have liked, and I can't remember who it was, but they confused Blaine for you. So
Oh,
they thought,
geez, I would not like that.
yeah,
It's,
the,
I was like, oh, you're the host. Yeah, no, I would not like
yeah,
that.
no,
Nor would
I
Blaine. I'm
told
sure Blaine
his
didn't like that.
Blaine's humor is subtle. It has to be extracted. With Vincent,
Yeah,
is going
it's
to
right
be
there.
in
It's
your
in your
face.
face. Blaine was cracking me up on this trip. We had a great time. So many good laughs, and glad we represented there, and we had more people than we usually have at these conferences, which was nice. We have a great partnership there with Live Ramp. So shout out to Live Ramp, and we were out in California, but I we did not run into this next guest. She hails from California, but I thought it was in the same area, and she was quick to correct me. She was like, "No, I do not live in that area." But I guess semi close. No, I'm not even sure. She'll explain it to me. California is a big state, but we are so happy to have her on the podcast, AJ. She's the director of marketing at Athlete Studio. Warm marketing stir welcome for Tiana Noveen. What's going on, Tiana?
Hi, Vincent. Hi, AJ. Thank you guys so much for having me on.
It's great to have you. So was I right? Because I was upset. I was like, wait a minute. Is Tiana in that area? And I failed to reach out to her to let her know that we were in the area to meet up with us. And she was like, nope, I'm not that close. Correct?
Yep, it's totally fine. I used to live in San Francisco, was there for about a decade, so totally makes sense. And very recently just moved down to Southern California. So
Yeah.
uh, proud San Franciscan at heart.
Nice. But she was like, but I'm going to the nicer weather in Southern California. Because I got to tell you something. I was coming from New York City, and I was like, and I think this is a common misconception of people, especially San Francisco, where like, it's California. It's going to be warm ish. No, it wasn't. Not the least. I wore the same exact clothing I would wear walking around the streets of Manhattan. So, common misconception.
Absolutely. I want to say it was Ernest Hemingway said that the coldest summer he's ever spent, or the coldest winter he's ever spent, is a summer in San Francisco.
Yeah, I know. That's I heard that too. It was crazy, but again, as you heard AJ and I talk, it was fun, and it's great talking to you, Tiana. We had met a while ago, and we're so happy that you're now on the podcast. So let's get right into it. So for those of you, Athlete Studio, talk to me about the company as well as your role. You're the director of marketing there. Talk to us about some of your day to day.
Yeah, I would love to. So background on Athlete Studio. So what we do is we work with professional athletes and brands to basically help them build their brand equity outside of, their NFL, NBA contracts. So we have about 200 athletes on our platform right now. And so what we do is we, build out their website, their e-commerce. So any merchandise that you see, getting them into NFTs where it makes sense. And then as well as working with brands to, help them in terms of loyalty programs as it comes to NFTs. So a quick example of that would be working with, various NBA teams to do in-stadium NFT drops and launches of that sort. So anything from, working with an athlete on an individual level to build out, a marketing plan or campaign for a specific piece of merch, or, something that's coming up in the next, couple of weeks for them, whether that be a Twitch live stream. So anything and everything, and definitely, an industry that keeps me on my toes, because as all those sports fans out there know, sports and games and stuff, anything can change in a minute. Like someone's career can take off, and with it one catch on Monday Night Football, for example. So it's very cool industry to be in, and very like on your toes, and very fun to work with all these various ladies and gentlemen.
And also, so touch upon a few things for us, Tiana. So talk to us about, for those that's listening, right, the NFTs. Break that down for us a little bit. If they're avid listeners of the podcast, we had on someone from the Milwaukee Bucks, and they very much utilize NFTs. But break that down for us, and then again, some of your day to day within the organization that you're responsible for. But yeah, but really get that NFT out there. I think people would love to know because we have a variety of listeners, and half of them might be like, "What is that?"
Absolutely. Yeah. I think NFTs often get a reputation for being a get rich quick type of uh, type of scheme. And I think the way to reframe the way NFTs work and the future of NFTs is that an NFT that you own is essentially like building your digital identity. So an example being, for me, I love Adidas. And if I own a digital, NFT of my favorite pair of Adidas that just dropped, then I could in turn get access to something for having that. So in its at its core, it's kind of giving people utility and access to future things. So right now, obviously it's early days, but in the future, someone who has, said Adidas like NMD brand shoe, then they would get access to a drop 25% off or something along those lines. So it depends, each brand gets to decide what, that looks like, whether that's like, hey, you hold these 5 NFTs in your wallet. Therefore, we know you're avid user of XYZ platform and we'll reward you with such and such. So, as I wouldn't buy a pair of Adidas assuming I'd get a monetary return, but I would buy a pair of Adidas and wear them for the, the look and the, I guess the like clout that comes with wearing that brand.
Absolutely. Then Tiana, tell us about how we ask all of our guests this and how you got into marketing and to begin with, because a lot of people's path is not so straight, right? So talk to us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So right after I graduated college, I went abroad to Australia and did a working holiday visa. So that's a visa that's accessible to anyone between the ages of 18 and 30. And while I was there originally, I was going to bartend, and then I was like, oh, I should build out my resume. And especially, I think a lot in terms of the Australian job market, you can build a lot there without having the experience. So I actually got introduced there through a contract role through a company called Black Hawk Network. And so what they do is they're the middleman between, the iTunes and all those gift cards that you see in, whatever grocery store is nearby, and, basically the iTunes and then the grocery store. So they're the middleman between that. And so that was my first role in marketing, and, just being able to see how diverse of a language marketing is, and then just fell in love with, it could be so creative, it could be so analytical, it could be anything you want it to be, really. So, and regardless, marketing is something that everybody needs, whether you're, an entrepreneur just getting started with your own business, or, a Fortune 100 company.
Tell us a little bit about, how you're marketing. What are some of the strategies and channels that you're offering?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that our business works right now is that we work with the athletes to build their brand, and we'll build their website. So from like the jump, we will build out the athlete's website and then work with that athlete to do a, promote like social promotion on their own channels. So it is a little bit non-traditional in that way, but then also, we'll work with those athletes to put like the, paid socials, obviously, helping them in terms of filming content to get out across, the various social channels. So right now it's very social and email heavy, but a lot of it comes from the athlete themselves. So, the more each of these athletes that we work with, the more we can drive home the value and equity that they're building in themselves and in their brand, and also in the communities that they're building. So, we also create subscription lists for people to be able to, stay in the inner circle of those athletes and know firsthand. So it's like having access to that athlete that you would not have otherwise, right? So like, I'll work with the athlete and their team to find out, hey, they have a 24-hour Twitch stream coming up, and they have a new merch drop, and hey, can I extract that story from them of like why this piece of merch, what it means to them? And then how do we, get a video of that, or, a clip, or even just like a couple of lines, so that it resonates on a deeper level with the fans. And so whether that's, getting an athlete into a AMA with the Discord audience, or, sending out email updates while they're in season or off season, or, if they're having a camp, summer camp for, like inner city kids. And so to answer your question, the long roundabout way is a variety of channels, but a lot of it is very like athlete centric. But then also from an athlete studio perspective, we have all of our own channels that we're like co-promoting all of those things with the athlete as well in tandem.
Gotcha. And tell us a little bit about, what makes Athlete Studio different from its competitors and how unique is it?
Yeah, absolutely. So what makes us different is, I'd say, the fact that we have, well, for one, my two co-founders is what definitely sets us apart. And one of my co-founders, his name's Chris Resto. He's been an agent for sports agent for 20 years. And then I have Nick Lemieux in my corner as well. So I have two very like robust in terms of understanding of how it works to work with an athlete, because I came prior to this, came from very B2B, very enterprise, and that is such a different world than being agent facing, athlete facing, and then the things that each of these athletes go through on a daily basis. So I'd say that's one thing is having the full like 360 view of, hey, here's like how athletes operate and work and like what we can do to work with them. And then in terms of our product, I'd say we have like the I feel like hippest sounds like a word that ages me, but like in terms of like our designs and our designing, our team of designers that we have that work with the athlete, whether it's a digital item launching or a physical item, I'd say that really, really differentiates us. And then the speed in which we work with the athletes to get their sites, their e-commerce, their, all of that live. And then also bringing athletes into the Web3. So side of things. So I'd say that's something that, especially with the current climate of the market, that's been something that athletes have been hesitant to engage with. And something I wanted, to test out is to see, hey, if we change the framing and kind of drop the word NFT, like, does that resonate more with the athlete? Does that resonate more with their communities? What are their communities saying? And how do we like bubble that up? So it's kind of, I'd say to summarize all of that, I'd say it's like the 360 view from whether it's having, a former agent in our back pocket to our team of designers to, hey, how do we like assess what's going on in the market and what's going on for that athlete? And then, use all of that to inform our strategies for that athlete, if that makes sense.
And Tiana, what would you say the athlete studio's specialty? Is there like is there a sport of an athlete that is it sports teams? What would you say is like with even the niche within the niche?
Yep. So right now we're predominantly NFL players. So I'd say about 70% of our roster is NFL. And then, this current offseason from the NFL, we're really focused on NBA. So I'd say we have currently about 10 NBA guys, some WNBA, some UFC, but in terms of like where our bulk lies, it is NFL for sure. But we do work with athletes on an individual level, but a lot of agencies as well. So like the sports agencies. And then if let's say, one agent has 5 athletes, then we would onboard those athletes and then get them set up with their site. So, as I mentioned at the beginning of our, time together, that like for, OBJ, he had that one catch that changed his career. And so the idea is like, hey, we want all of this in place for the moment that happens so that, we can like pounce essentially and come up with a, like for Justin Jefferson on the Minnesota Vikings this past season, we created like a catch of the year hoodie for him and a catch of the year, and made him like some streetwear and essentially like a bundle that had an NFT incorporated into it, and like a token gated, like you needed the NFT to get access to this special limited edition drop. And so being able to jump in on these moments for when their careers skyrocket and essentially monetize for them, right? So then they have like themselves and their marketing teams will then have a list of subscribers, customers, people that want to reach out in terms of opportunities, sponsorships, etc. So being able to give them all of that information that other than people reaching out through social media they otherwise wouldn't have.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I first learned about NFTs through the National Football League as well. I believe it was like Tom Brady, that Eli Manning and Peyton started up some stuff, and me as a Giants fan, I was like intrigued. But it's like I feel like NFTs are changing the marketing world. So talk to us about like how do you think that's happening? What what's the hype around them? Is it just like, it's beyond the sports world too, but to comment on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd say NFTs equal like hyper personalization for marketers and for like the consumer as well. Like, so in the future, if I hold, so I have, 2 cats, and let's say I have cat NFTs, and then therefore marketers know that I'm a cat mom, and then they could specifically market things. And I know right now that exists obviously to a degree where, Instagram's always listening, or all of that. But outside of that, it's just like hyper personalization, and also just getting closer and closer access to whether that's a brand or an athlete. And a great example of this is, something that my team and I wanted to test is, hey, if we change the name NFT to something like Athlete Pass, would that change the sentiment? Because we did both, right? We launched like a NFT pack for an athlete where he's talking about it as an NFT, and then there was not saying the word NFT at all, calling it a digital collectible, and just saying like, we guinea pig this with Terry McLaurin, who's a wide receiver on the Washington Commanders. And essentially we have a video of him saying like, hey, like, he's Terry McLaurin, and how he wants people to join his Athlete Pass, and what they get out of that is exclusive content, merch drops that are only, so it just allows for a lot more like limited edition, a lot more things that in terms of rewards that you can do. So whether that's, hey, collect these 5 things and get access to this. So it's, I think honestly, sky's the limit with that. And it's just kind of meeting the market where they're at. So, right now, the word NFT isn't as popular as it was, let's say, in 2021. So, still utilizing the functionality that the blockchain gives us, but in terms of meeting your audience where they're at, and that's something that in terms of like asking people around me, I'm like, hey, do you understand NFTs, or does this make sense, or just meeting your audience in terms of like verbiage where they're at.
And this is a field that's dominated by men. What advice would you give somebody who's a young woman who's trying to enter this field?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd say my first and most important piece of advice I think that I've ever gotten in my career, and that has served me very well, is no one is going to advocate for your work for you. And it is your job to make people care, essentially. And I'd say something that I found super useful is kind of figuring out what the goal and motivation of the person or team or group across from me is, and then using that as a data point for me to center around of like, hey, here's what I'm working on, but here's the data that came from it, and like essentially here's why it benefits you or team or product or whatever it may be. But like continuously, I think a lot of people assume that hey, people know what I'm working on, right? But until you kind of distill it down in a short, digestible like way to get people to care, essentially, and kind of center it around what would be important to them, that I think has really given me a leg up. And I think especially as a woman in the space, in sports, like it is absolutely male dominated, and just voicing your opinion, and not being shy to do so. And I'd say the first couple times is definitely nerve-wracking, and then you get more and more used to it, and the rest goes from there.
And are there experiences that you think are kind of unique to women in the field that requires a different type of female leadership?
Yes, like I'd say in terms of having a voice in this space, like I know for myself, I didn't come into this in terms of my sports background, I didn't come into this with a heavy sports background. And I actually wanted to make that a strength instead too, to say like, hey, if I can't understand XYZ, like maybe we need to reframe the way we're talking about it so it reaches a broader audience, or and then also I'd say that this kind of encouraging the younger generation of people coming in to use their voice, to say it, to really highlight that your opinion matters, and that like we would essentially, you wouldn't have the job you have unless we wanted that opinion, right? And I think I had a manager in my early career say that to me when I wasn't speaking up, and really pushed me out of my comfort zone. So I'd say just being able to kind of see what people's strengths are, and even asking. I ask my team that all the time. Hey, what did this project, was this fun for you? Was this not? Like just I feel like people will always give you the answers if you're, willing to ask, and, helping put people in the places that bring them joy, and, shifting around other projects and stuff. Because another learning is, if let's say, for example, for myself, like I can absolutely do email marketing. It is not a personal passion of mine, but there's so many people who it is a passion for, and just like figuring that out so that everyone is doing what they love.
It's a passion of mine. Data is a passion, and email is a passion of mine. I get it. That's like it's an inside joke about data. But so Tiana, talk to us about some big news coming out. Any new news coming out for Athlete Studio? What are you excited about?
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely very excited. We've been, very athlete, individual centric, and then now we're, unleashing an enterprise offering where we will work with brands. And right now it is mostly focused around, sports teams, but that'll eventually expand to a lot broader of an audience, but essentially giving kind of the framework for creating a loyalty program through NFTs. And I mentioned the example of, the and working with the NBA teams, essentially to do in-stadium, in-arena drops, and then rewarding in-person attendance. And so essentially, if you go to, let's say, 10 Celtics games, and at each one you collect the, off the Jumbotron halftime NFT, then you get XYZ. So working with either brands or teams to kind of identify, hey, is that, a merch credit? Is that what does that look like? And how do we build that out into something that's a robust rewards for, encouraging people to be there in person, as well as, bring in stadium sponsorships and, the different pieces, whether that's, Adobe sponsors the Giant Stadium, like kind of bringing in the different pieces so that it's working like across all the pieces of what the stadium is already doing, but just bringing that into the, like, I guess, immediate user experience for the consumer that's in the seat.
All this talk, AJ, what I first thought, I was like, you know what? It's maybe time for the marketing stir to get its own NFT. We need to make some, we have fans. We should get like our own exclusive content, what we could do. I don't know. Maybe we'll have to figure that out. Maybe a song by Carl Van Delden or something, an exclusive song that they unload. But that's awesome. Tiana, talk to me about, you touched upon a lot of great advice that you were given and then that you live by. But, any, thus far, a shining moment in your career, something you're really proud of?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I know I mentioned this a bit, but I'd say the, launching Athlete Pass and figuring out, that was like the conundrum of what was going on in my mind right before that is, hey, how do we make NFTs relatable to anyone, right? That I could explain to my grandmother and they'd understand. She'd understand, or, an 8-year-old. And then trying to figure out, like, hey, asking people what would motivate you to get an NFT. And then figuring out, like, hey, if the athlete says it in this way, is that digestible? Is that understandable? And the aha moment when it like clicked and I saw, the athlete posted and his entire community blow up and say, wow, this is so awesome. Like that was such a moment of, an exciting moment for me in, just my career, to be like, oh, wow, we can really distill down kind of any concept, regardless of how technical, and make it understandable and digestible. And that was really, really awesome. And I'd say super proud of that. So that's definitely more recent. And then another, big moment in my career that I'm really proud of is launching the employee advocacy program at Unity and getting it to scale to 2,000 employees. So from, I did employee advocacy at Adobe prior to that, and then, saw a gap when I got to Unity and, realized there's so many passionate employees, and being able to harness that power of that passion and, track, hey, what does this do for the bottom line of the business and in terms of business impact. So I think that was a really valuable and exciting experience, just because I was on the social media team and we weren't tied to revenue, but I was able to prove and provide direct revenue from a program that I launched, and helped everyone from, recruiting to sales, and in terms of like building their pipelines and being more active on social, and, building personal brand. So personal brand is a big passion for sure.
Awesome. So one of our staple questions here is around LinkedIn. So I'm sure you get a lot of unsolicited messages. So would love to know what's a message that gets a response from you and what's one that really annoys you.
That's a great question. I like that. I'd say ones that get a response, I'd say, in like something that just feels authentic and genuine, and is more like conversational, I'd say, versus like a full immediate pitch. And I know, there have been people who will be like, oh, I want to add you to my network, and then immediately come in hot with like, let's talk about my software. And, I get the hustle, absolutely. But, that's when, that's probably when I would be like, oh, it's okay. Unless it was a software that I specifically like very much needed. But I mean, in terms of the amount that happens is a lot. But, I've had people, I think the one that was really impactful, like I had a guy reach out and, he recorded a video about his like software and how it would, and not like a, demo video, but just of him. So I'd say, yeah, the more personal and authentic, the more likely that it is that I'm going to respond. And also, I think that's how I found you guys too, was a LinkedIn reach out. So, a lot of good can come from it too. So
there we go. We got an example of one you responded to.
Sure did.
So I have to ask you this because I got into fantasy football just about 6 months ago, and it just so happened, total coincidence, that Vincent and I were the 2 ones in the finals. So is this something you dabble in? I know you weren't a big sports fan when you started, but do you guys have an office fantasy league as well, since you work with a lot of athletes?
So in terms of fantasy, that's something I definitely plan to get into next season. I think this season was just starting to even understand all the, whether it's basketball or football, just like how it all works. And to be fair, I think a few people on my team were like, hey, you're not at the point to be in a league. We're too competitive for this. So for now. Which is totally fair. Like, I get it. People take it so seriously. Like on draft day, people are like heads down, like don't want to be. And my dad is such a huge football fan that on Mondays I'll be like, Dad, can I come watch the game with you? And he's like, only if you're going to actually let me watch. Like, so yeah, I'm surrounded by a lot of serious sports fans. And I'd say, now I have a good enough foundation to get into that. And I think, it sounds like such a good way. And, whoever created fantasy is such a genius, making everybody feel so invested and, staying so on top of it and learning. So I'd say that's honestly going to be a really good way for me to learn, to be honest.
Well, yeah, and other people do fantasy football for only once their entire life, and they go and read a book, and they wind up winning the whole thing. That's our co-host, and I was the victim of that win. I was the victim of it.
I wasn't going to go that far. Vincent,
well, that's of course there was the only other reason to bring it up. I knew you brought it up for a reason. It's but yes, he did win our league this year. The true test, Tiana, is next year. Was it beginner's luck, or is he a real competitor? So, fantasy football is not your thing right now, but maybe it will be. But talk to us about some of your hobbies interests. You moved from San Francisco down to, sunny California there. Tell us what you like to do for fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So I live in Long Beach on the beach. So I love, going for walks by the water. I just took up roller skating. It's been a journey in which knee pads have been very useful.
Roller skating, yeah. You don't hear people just taking up roller skating. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really fun, and a lot of people definitely do it in the area. So that, and then I also teach yoga, and definitely very avid practitioner of yoga. So I'd say that as well. And then anything and everything self-help. I recently went to go see Esther Hicks and see her conference that she actually came to Long Beach, and so yeah, I'd say between that and traveling, and my two cats. I'd say, and then also, trying all the restaurants and going out for food. And this past weekend, I went to an amazing Persian restaurant, and, being Iranian born and raised, it was like the best. So yeah, no shortage of extracurricular activities over here.
That's awesome. And, I don't know if AJ even knows this, but I am getting back into yoga 1 week.
Wow.
In 1 week from when we record this. Yeah, because I have to strengthen my core. I'm getting too old. I feel like there's flights I take now, and for 6 days after, I'm just in pain. And I never felt better than when I took yoga. And so I'm back into it. I'm going to, I think, the Core Power Yoga Studio in Tribeca here. So
Nice.
that's
I thought you were going to say you were also part Persian. So
no, I know it's but Persian food sounds amazing. That does sound. I'm sure in New York City there's tons of places. But yeah, gonna get back into get back into yoga next week actually. So stay tuned, listeners, to hear how that goes. Tiana, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. Thank you for all the things that you do there at Athlete Studio, ladies and gentlemen. That is Tiana Noveen. She's the Director of Marketing at Athlete Studio. That's Ajay Gupta, fresh off a trip and a fantasy football victory. I'm Vincent Petrofessa. This has been another episode of Stirista's The Marketing Stir. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Marketing Stir podcast by Stirista. Please like, rate, and subscribe. If you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, please email us at themarketingstir@stirista.com. And thanks for listening.